Rajagopalan, Founder Medical Director, Sundaram Medical Foundation, Chennai. A brief introduction about our resource person. Dr. Arjun Rajagopalan was the best outgoing student, Johnstone Medal from Madras Medical College. He did his residency training in general surgery in the US at the Loyola University Medical Center, Chicago, where he was the best outgoing senior resident. He obtained certification from the American Board of Surgery. He is a fellow of the Royal College of Surgeons of Canada. Returning to India, he conceived, set up and ran the Sundaram Medical Foundation. As we all know, it is a 200-bedded modern full-service teaching hospital that provides postgraduate training for certification. He has behind him a lifelong record of thinking, teaching and talking about EBM, evidence-based medical practice. He is an equal ardent believer in the value of information systems in enhancing the quality and efficiency of modern medical practice. Reflecting on his career with regards to competencies that could now be redirected to the large audience, thinking critically, teaching young minds, and communicating, speaking, writing, and engaging in forums. He is interested on these three areas: thinking, teaching, and talking. Over to you, sir, please.
Very good afternoon to all of you gathered here, ladies and gentlemen. Before I even start with my presentations, I have to begin with a very emotional introduction. As a teacher, as a lifelong teacher, and somebody who believes in the value of good teaching, I can honestly say that the presentation that you just heard before me, Mahalakshmi's, is easily one of the best, most well put together, most informative and absolutely brilliant talk that I've heard in many, many years. I am so proud of you, Mahalakshmi. You don't know how much my heart swells today. And obviously, from the introduction, most of you will realize that I'm a person who is well past his sell-by date. If I finished my MBBS in 1975, that means that, as a rough guess, I must be almost at the end of the whole process. And probably at the point like when you're coming down in an airplane, they tell you to bring your seats up, put your seat belts on, put your tray tables forward, and pray like hell that you have a safe and not a bumpy ride. That's the stage of life that I am in now. Very much on the downward decline, and so it's a fantastic pleasure, a very, very great pleasure, and it's with a deep sense of gratitude and thanks that I am here today to follow what was an absolutely brilliant lecture. I think that it's a privilege. Now, we could get started if somehow I can get the slides going. So, once again, when Mahalakshmi first asked me to do this talk, I was struck by the rather unusual nature of the talk. All that you had earlier on in terms of your presentations was presentations that were addressed towards the formal aspect of research publishing. And this was a little unusual, so I was kind of even reluctant. What am I? Okay, I'll let you know how old I am. I'm 72. What am I, a 72-year-old, trying to talk about something called social media to a group of audience that is in their 20s. This is social media is something that's up your line, and I was I said hesitant, and then I said, okay, fine, I like challenges, and I've always been somebody who might see myself as being extremely computer literate. I could give most of you in the audience a run for your money as far as computers, information technologies, and computer literacy is concerned. So I said, okay, it's a good challenge. Let me see how best I can handle it. The next thing she did to me is she said, sir, I'd like you to speak for 60 minutes. 60 minutes? That's torture, that pain beyond understanding. And it brings you to mind a little anecdote where the very famous lecturer was asked, how long does he prepare? And he said, if you want me to give you a 10-minute lecture, the effort involved was so big that it'll take me dead again. Is it? Gone? I'll just transfer to that 1 second. Yeah, wait. So anyway, the guy got, when she said 60 minutes, I said, how can it be? Reminds you of the story of the man who was asked, how long do you prepare for your talks? And he said that if I need to talk for 10 minutes, it takes an awful lot of work. I have to make sure that every sentence I say is critical. It'll take me at least a month. If I have to talk for a half hour, I could usually do it in about a week. If you want me to talk for 60 minutes, I'm ready, I can talk right now. I don't require any preparation. So we said, no, 60 minutes is way too long for a talk for anybody. So let me try and see how brief I can be and how quickly we can compress this whole thing so that we can move on to the most important element of the day, which is lunch. Correct? All right. So anyway, the topic we have been asked to talk about today is advocacy for using advocacy for sending across or amplifying messages in healthcare. Now, when you use the word advocacy, it's not a very well understood or clearly thought out word, and the definition that I picked, that I found, is extremely simple and at the same time hits bang on, is the art of advocacy is to lead you to my conclusions on your terms. And that's the secret of success. The effectivity of advocacy depends on two things: how well I can communicate my message, and it's not enough if I communicate my message because it may be completely opposed to what you want to believe in. So I have to have you have a buy into the whole thing. And advocacy is therefore difficult because it means two things. You should know what you're doing, and the audience to whom you're directing it should be in a frame of mind to receive it, understand it, accept it, and use it. And that's why advocacy is such a big challenge. Now, without a doubt, the last 2 decades have been the age of social media. If you need to get any kind of a message across, you're almost compelled to use this thing called social media. And what it does to you, social media gives you a historically unprecedented tool. At no point in mankind's written history of 5,000 or 6,000 years have we had a tool of this capability. You can get information, and that's entirely the thrust of what we've been seeing this morning. How can I get information to the largest number of people? And today you can do it across the globe in minutes. The moment there is an earthquake happening in Turkey, within seconds you know about it here. The moment something of great importance is happening, the information communication across the globe happens in time frames that are so tiny, and you can send across ideas, information, content, any kind of expression of human ideas to a huge number of people. And this has been something very, very liberating because it has given power to the people. All revolutions prior to the advent of social media took a lot of work and effort. You needed enormous resources. It was a slow process, and getting it across to people was difficult. But today, in the last 10 or 15 years, the power that people have to be able to communicate huge amounts of information to huge segments of people is vast. The big 10 of social media that we all know about are essentially this list over here, with Facebook coming still, in spite of the fact that it is looking very old, cranky, and not of us believe that it's in its last days. Facebook still continues to be the most popular social media. You come down the list, YouTube comes next, and you go down the list of about 8 to 10 active social media that constitutes the big 10. So when you say social media today, you're referring to one or more of these tools. But the important thing is that all of these tools combined, it's estimated today, has an audience of 4.2 billion. Approximately 1/2 of the world's population today is on one or more of these social media channels, and that it is such an astounding, mind-blowing statistic that we don't realize how important it is. When books were first printed by Gutenberg 400, 500 years ago, it was thought to be a revolution. All of a sudden, knowledge which was only in the hands of a few libraries and a few priestly classes suddenly could be disseminated. But there you were only talking about 100 books, 200 books over a decade, 3 decades. Today, you have the potential to take across an idea to half the globe, and it's growing. 4.5 billion people can see, hear, or listen to what you have to say almost immediately, and that's fantastic power. No question at all. But as the expression goes, with great power comes great responsibility. Mahalakshmi knew it, I know. And this great power we got because of a technology that is very recent, in the last 20 years. It's called Web 2.0, where the original internet, when it started in the mid-1980s, was based on a technology that was not easily accessible to the user. It was very much determined by who was delivering the technology. What Web 2.0 did in 1999 was it gave you a combination of collaboration with user-generated content and the use of what's called rich media. You can put together audio, video, text. You can show one 6-week-old or 6-month-old Chinese child somewhere in Hong Kong dancing to the beat of some tune. You can do all kinds of things. You can push media across in time frames that are very, very small and can reach so many people. And that was just advent of social media. And social media is extremely recent. It's just about 15 to 20 years old. What enhanced it even further was the ability of the mobile phone technology and smartphones. During the entire talk in the last 3 to 4 hours, almost every one of you was on a smartphone. When Mahalakshmi was talking, you were thumbing away, right? That is the power of the technology. It's immediate, it's instant, it's available globally, and everybody that is now the hardest thing in India today would be to find somebody who doesn't have a smartphone. So it's fantastic, a combination of a technology that is utterly, absolutely mind-blowing. But, and this is a very important but, because we're talking about using social media for an important event, advocacy, you must remember that the use of social media is a continuous pitched battle between two things. On one hand, you have the content, stuff that you've taken so much time and trouble to prepare. And in this, again, I keep saying, praising her, but Mahalakshmi did a brilliant job with content. She used slides the way they were supposed to, as visual media, effective communication. But however much and however well tailored your content is, in today's world of constant connectivity, your content is competing with an extremely different commodity called attention. In fact, this decade and beyond is no longer called the industrial economy. We started with an agricultural economy, which moved on to an industrial economy. We're now in what's called the attention economy, where the currency of the day, what gives you validity or lack of validity, is not money, but how many people's attention you can grab. We're in the middle of the attention economy, so this commodity, attention, is in very short supply. And when you have content that you want to give to your population, making sure that you get their attention is a challenge. It's a huge challenge, and this challenge is further compounded by the fact that humans are by nature distracted individuals. How many of you here are students of yoga? Nobody? Nobody does yoga? Come on, guys, somebody somewhere. This is India. Whatever, I'll tell you. The whole essence of yoga is not the physical exercises, but ultimately it's an exercise that teaches you to control attention. It says that if you can, the first sloka of Patanjali's Yoga Sutra starts off that way. It's the ability to prevent your attention from changing shape and form. That's the hardest thing to do. While I am talking itself, you guys have been thinking of a million other things. Who's going to call me? Am I going to go out? Where are we going for dinner? Who's angry with me? Will this guy ever stop talking? You know, that kind of stuff will keep on going to you. Attention span for humans over time is extremely limited. And it's been shown that anytime you start delivering a message, within 2 minutes, 80% of the attention span will be gone. You will lose 3/4 or more of your audience within 2 minutes. That's the critical time you have, and you go beyond 5 or 10 minutes, you can be sure they are on their smartphones. They're not going to be listening to you, okay? Even more so, and this is with standard attention, when it comes to a question of attention over the internet, over social media, it's been shown that on the web, your attention span is less than a goldfish in a bowl, 10 to 12 seconds. That's all. If your screen does not catch imagination, you're on to the next one. And it's admitted. That's how all of you guys are surfing all the time. The human attention span in the age of the internet and the age of social media is roughly 12 seconds. 12 seconds. That's all you have. And that's the challenge of using social media to spread for advocacy is the very narrow window of opportunity that you've got. Okay? So, we'll leave that aside because the problem point here is to try and see whether we can do something to evolve a strategy for getting your message across through social media. And I'll talk to you about an 8-step approach. Whenever you're using social media, and if you want to use it in a serious fashion, you have to do 8 things. First thing that you have to do, and the one that you need to know with absolute clarity is, what do you want to change? Advocacy is essentially about bringing about change. You want people to do something different from the way they were earlier. But the clearest thing you have to get in your mind is, what do you want change? And for this, again, the mnemonic that is constantly used is what you even earlier heard when it was being presented, is the SMART algorithm. It's old-fashioned, it's hackneyed, but still continues to be highly usable, where whatever it is that you're attempting to change, you must be very specific. The more narrow you are, the better the chances that you can produce a change. You can't say, I want to cure diabetes, it's not going to happen. But you can do a small aspect of things like saying that I want people to be able to focus on their feet and trimming and cutting their nails properly so that they don't get diabetic foot infection, and then I can prevent them from being amputated. Your specific focus has to be that narrow. You have to be very narrowly, specifically focused. Has to be measurable. Whatever you're doing has to be objectively quantifiable, has to be achievable. You can't extend saying, I want to cure diabetes is not achievable. But something narrow and well-focused is achievable, has to be relevant. It's got to be something that a large number of people can use. And lastly, it has to be time-bound. It has to be something that you can deliver quickly. So whenever you're starting a social media advocacy campaign, this is the first thing that you need to know is clearly defining what is it that I want to change. If you don't do that, you'll get nowhere. Your efforts will be all out of focus. The second most important thing you have to determine is, who do you want to change? Your target has to be, and today, getting an audience on social media is essentially a question on getting to an audience, getting to a target audience. And defining this target audience can involve many things like simple things, demographics like age, gender, location, what are they interested in, what are their psychographic personality traits, what are their cultures, values, and and attitudes. All of these are important because if you don't, you'll find you won't get the message across to the right group of people. Identifying that group, and today's social media tools allow you to do this. Gives you the power to be able to specifically define the target population to which you can address your message. Once you have done this, the third challenge, and this is the most important challenge, is putting content out into social media. Everything depends on, and if your whole project is fairly serious, content, still more content. Content is where you've got to keep on focusing on, and that's why it makes the task so difficult. It's not an easy task, and you have a variety of choices. The preferred medium of communication on social media is visual. It's either got videos have the best effect, and these videos cannot be 60 minutes long. They've got to be within 2 to 3 minutes. Short, well done, well-focused videos, infographics, through visuals being able to communicate information, and you saw numerous examples in Mahalakshmi's talk, images. So the impact of social media is maximum when you use visual impact and not text. If you have to use, and you can use things like polls, where you can bring your audience into the interactivity by asking them to vote. And if you have to use text, preferably use text in the form of stories. People are more inclined to listen to stories than they are to long chunks and broad amounts of text. When you deliver content, you have to do what's called the crap analysis. If you will notice, there's an extra A on it. It's not the usual crap analysis. And what the purpose of this analysis is to make sure that you're not delivering BS. I won't expand BS because there's a polite academic audience and you all know what we're talking about. So how do you increase your BS sensitivity? You ask yourself certain questions about the content and you put it through a checklist. See, A, is the content current? Is this something that is valuable and current? Is the content relevant? Is it something that you need to know? Is it accurate? And we're talking today about misinformation on gigantic scales. We're talking about cognitive dissonance of a nature that is huge. So is it accurate? Does it come from somebody with authority? Is it just some idiot with a technology who's trying to sell it to you? Or does it come from somebody reputable and accurate? And does it have a specific purpose? So your content must pass the checklist for all of these elements before it can be considered usable. Use hashtags. The medium of identification or indexing in social media today is hashtags, and I'm sure you all know what hashtags are. And careful use of hashtags is necessary, but these hashtags have to be relevant and specific. Don't use generic hashtags. Don't say hashtag good, hashtag pretty, hashtag, those are all very generic. Be very, very specific about the hashtags that you're using. There are tools available that will allow you to research what are popular hashtags. And the popularity of hashtags very much will determine whether your message goes across to maximum number of people. There are tools like Hashtagify, Right Tag. These are all subscriber-based tools, which if you put in words will tell you how much likely they are to be picked up. And it will also rank for you all popular hashtags. So it's a fairly well worked out exercise. Use what are called branded hashtags. That is, in other words, hashtags that only you and your agency will use as opposed to anybody else. And that will again give you greater ability to spread. Don't flood your post with hashtags. Don't hashtag. You see messages where every third word is a hashtag. Or you get a list of around 24 hashtags in the end, they won't work. Most social media algorithms will stop at around 3 to 5 hashtags. So don't flood your message with excessive amount of hashtags. And then you use the same hashtags across multiple devices, and we'll talk about what the devices are shortly. So these are, in today's terms, social media's indexing goes on the basis of hashtags, not on the basis of your standard index and content. You have to learn how to use hashtags very, very skillfully. Engage with the users. The entire impact of Web 2.0 is the ability to interact with users, to engage with the users. And this means, asking them to comment, feedback, user-generated content, polls, and all of these things increase the receptivity, increase the effectivity of your message. Monitor your diabetes is not going to happen. But you can do a small aspect of things like saying that I want people to be able to focus on their feet and trimming and cutting their nails properly so that they don't get diabetic foot infection, and then I can prevent them from being amputated. Your specific focus has to be that narrow. You have to be very narrowly, specifically focused. Has to be measurable. Whatever you're doing has to be objectively quantifiable, has to be achievable. You can't extend saying I want to cure diabetes is not achievable. But something narrow and well-focused is achievable. Has to be relevant. It's got to be something that a large number of people can use. And lastly, it has to be time-bound. It has to be something that you can deliver quickly. So whenever you're starting a social media advocacy campaign, this is the first thing that you need to know is clearly defining what is it that I want to change. If you don't do that, you'll get nowhere. Your efforts will be all out of focus. The second most important thing you have to determine is who do you want to change? Your target has to be, and today, getting an audience on social media is essentially a question on getting to an audience, getting to a target audience. And defining this target audience can involve many things like simple things, demographics like age, gender, location, what are they interested in, what are their psychographic personality traits, what are their cultures, values, and, and attitudes. All of these are important because if you don't, you'll find you won't get the message across to the right group of people. Identifying that group, and today's social media tools allow you to do this. Gives you the power to be able to specifically define the target population to which you can address your message. Once you have done this, the third challenge, and this is the most important challenge, is putting content out into social media. Everything depends on, and if your whole project is fairly serious, content, still more content. Content is where you've got to keep on focusing on, and that's why it makes the task so difficult. It's not an easy task, and you have a variety of choices. The preferred medium of communication on social media is visual. It's either got videos have the best effect, and these videos cannot be 60 minutes long. They've got to be within 2 to 3 minutes. Short, well done, well-focused videos, infographics, through visuals being able to communicate information, and you saw numerous examples in Mahalakshmi's talk, images. So the impact of social media is maximum when you use visual impact and not text. If you have to use, and you can use things like polls, where you can bring your audience into the interactivity by asking them to vote. And if you have to use text, preferably use text in the form of stories. People are more inclined to listen to stories than they are to long chunks and broad amounts of text. When you deliver content, you have to do what's called the CRAP analysis. If you will notice, there's an extra A on it. It's not the usual CRAP analysis. And what the purpose of this analysis is to make sure that you're not delivering BS. I won't expand BS because this is a polite academic audience and you all know what we're talking about. So how do you increase your BS sensitivity? You ask yourself certain questions about the content and you put it through a checklist. See, A, is the content current? Is this something that is valuable and current? Is the content relevant? Is it something that you need to know? Is it accurate? And we're talking today about misinformation on gigantic scales. We're talking about cognitive dissonance of a nature that is huge. So is it accurate? Does it come from somebody with authority? Is it just some idiot with a technology who is trying to sell it to you, or does it come from somebody reputable and accurate? And does it have a specific purpose? So your content must pass the checklist for all of these elements before it can be considered usable. Use hashtags. The medium of identification or indexing in social media today is hashtags, and I'm sure you all know what hashtags are. And careful use of hashtags is necessary, but these hashtags have to be relevant and specific. Don't use generic hashtags. Don't say hashtag good, hashtag pretty, hashtag, those are all very generic. Be very, very specific about the hashtags that you're using. There are tools available that will allow you to research what are popular hashtags. And the popularity of hashtags very much will determine whether your message goes across to maximum number of people. There are tools like Hashtagify, Right Tag. These are all subscriber-based tools, which if you put in words will tell you how much likely they are to be picked up. And it will also rank for you all popular hashtags. So it's a fairly well worked out exercise. Use what are called branded hashtags. That is, in other words, hashtags that only you and your agency will use as opposed to anybody else. And that will again give you, greater ability to spread. Don't flood your post with hashtags. Don't hashtag. You see messages where every third word is a hashtag. Or you get a list of around 24 hashtags in the end, they won't work. Most social media algorithms will stop at around 3 to 5 hashtags. So don't flood your message with excessive amount of hashtags. And then you use the same hashtags across multiple devices, and we'll talk about what the devices are shortly. So these are, in today's terms, social media's indexing goes on the basis of hashtags, not on the basis of your standard index and content. You have to learn how to use hashtags very, very skillfully. Engage with the users. The entire impact of Web 2.0 is the ability to interact with users, to engage with the users, and this means, asking them to comment, feedback, user-generated content, polls, and all of these things are increase the receptivity, increase the effectivity of your message. Monitor for somebody who puts up a response to note to feel that nobody ever looked at it. One of the reasons why on social media you keep on responding is because you want the message to spread. So monitor your engagement with users and can follow them very promptly. Collaboration is another important aspect of the interactive web. Identify those who had similar ideas, ask them to write guest posts for you, ask them to comment on your social media channel, ask for editorials, opinions, and provide links to other content which has similar interests. This way that, what happens is your message gets amplified over multiple other social media tools that are available. And then you monitor what you're doing using what are called key performance indicators, which include things like reach and traffic. How many people have you got out to? What kind of engagement are you getting? Is it just whatever you post, is it just lying dead in the water, or are you getting a response? Enough people are commenting, reacting, propagating the message. That's important. Are you enrolling people into your whole program? Are you making behavior change? All of these are aspects of a social media advocacy that you have to follow. And there are tools available for all of these things. All of us hope for this element called virality. We've all heard about posts going viral. That is, all of a sudden you put something up and 10 million people have seen it. And what usually determines virality is that somebody first sees it, they click on it, and they have a desire to share it, and they share it. Now, depending on the value of this information, the faster this loop goes, the more likelihood for your post to get viral, for more people to see it. And virality is, again, you need to be emotional. Although Mahalakshmi kept talking to us about the need for cognition and careful analysis, virality is very few people are thinking it through. It's a very emotional appeal that you have to have. Put a little message of a baby who's starving will have far more impact than a statistical bar graph or something showing you how vitamin B6 affects neural growth. So you need to have a lot of emotional appeal, visual appeal. As we said much earlier on, social media is a visual tool. And the more visual the appeal is, the greater the likelihood that this will go across to many people. Needless to say, your information has to be unique and has to be relevant. And the likelihood of virality of any post, this has again been calculated out, the likelihood of virality in any of your social media posts is actually very, very low. Less than 0.01%. Less than 1 in 10,000 posts will get viral. So don't look for or don't hope for virality to be the medium by which your advocacy is going to grow. Lastly, and very, very important, none of these things happen by overnight. Everybody feels like, I'm going to put a YouTube video, I'm going to become a YouTube star, millions of people are going to watch me, and at the end of my life, I'll make thousands. No, it does not happen. The actual number of people who make significant amounts of money or success on YouTube is so small that if you think of it as a career, it's not even worth it. Numerically, we see only the end results. Out of the millions and billions of videos on YouTube, we are seeing the few that seem to work well, and we seem to think that this will happen, to all of us. You see Virat Kohli making all that monumental sums of money playing cricket. And you think, well, if I play cricket, I can also make that kind of money. Highly unlikely. That's the same way, success on the social media involves an awful lot of persistence. You have to, it's not a one-time thing. It's not something that you can do for 10 or 15 minutes in a day. You have to work at it. Most of the people who have successful social media channels work 14 hours, 16 hours a day on those channels. It's an extremely demanding, very hard work, and it's like dripping water hollow out of a stone. Dripping water hollows out a stone, not through force, but through persistence. Ovid was a famous Greek philosopher who about 2,000 years ago said that, and it matters the same ways. Even though we see the results as being something dramatic and immediate, it requires a lot of persistence. It's not something that will happen by snapping a finger. Advocacy on social media today is very difficult. How long do you think your posts last on social media? And it's very small. A Twitter tweet has a life of approximately 15 minutes. That's it. It's shorter than your, flies and all that kind of stuff. If your Twitter tweet is not seen within 10 to 15 minutes, nobody is going to see it. It has a very, very short life. A little bit more with Instagram. Instagram being a visual medium will usually last. I'm sure you're the Instagram generation, right? How many of you here don't have an Instagram account? My gosh, 3. All of them are older for above 30 or 40. Brilliant. Which means that all the rest of you have Instagram accounts, right? See, that's the medium of communication today. But it's a very visual medium, very short term. And whether you can do serious advocacy with it, yes, you can. There are any number of so-called influencers who just by effective Instagram posts have to be able to make, but again, there's the same challenge again. You have to be consistent, you have to get all the rules we talked about earlier. But Instagram is slightly better and is very much the your generation. The generation beyond you is not even into Instagram, they're all into TikTok. And TikTok is something that I cannot understand. I'm too old for TikTok, all right? I can keep up with Instagram, I can't handle TikTok. If you're a little bit more serious, it was Facebook. Now, when Facebook first started 20 years ago, it was for college graduates. And then over time, more and more, first your parents went on it, now your grandparents are on it, and Facebook is something which if you say you're a Facebook user, you're probably like me. This person has got nothing to do except Twitter. So Facebook, but it still continues to have the largest traction. When we saw all those lists of top social media things, Facebook is still on top. But is generally considered to be now not very fashionable. But the advantage of Facebook is it has a little longer life. Information on Facebook will last around 1 to 7 days. And if you really want to do it on a very professional basis, LinkedIn is an option. The number one characteristic about LinkedIn is it is boring. Extremely boring as a social media. It is basically for businesses, people who would like to do business communication. But the advantage of LinkedIn is it has a very long, what's called a long tail. LinkedIn messages can stay on for weeks and months even. So you have to, so knowing this in the back of your mind, when we're talking about evolving a strategy for social media advocacy, Twitter is therefore best for some places where you want an instant call to action. You want somebody to see something and respond. Twitter, both Twitter and I suppose Instagram also is when you want somebody to respond, and Instagram particularly when you want them to respond to a visual or an image or a short clip. But there again, useful. If you use Facebook, you're essentially looking at a mature audience, an audience that is willing to spend some time, maybe even read some text that you put across. And lastly, if you're using business, if you want your primary purpose is to move it across business circles, then LinkedIn is an exceptional tool. It has like 600, 800 million users worldwide. There is one other social media profile tool that I have not put up, but as young people, I would strongly encourage you to follow. It's called Reddit. How many of you here have used Reddit? Only Mahalakshmi. It kind of figures in Mahalakshmi, I would expect. Reddit is an exceptional social media tool. It consists of highly intelligent people. Very, very critical. You cannot pass BS through them. If they think yours is not worth it, they will tell you that. But by the same token, it also is probably the most, Mahalakshmi was talking about critical thinking. Reddit is for critical thinkers. There is no information that you can't find on Reddit. In fact, when you do a Google search, you put your Google search term and end it by saying site:/reddit.com. It will pick up only the relevant material from Reddit, and you will find that the quality of information will go up by leaps and bounds. But Reddit is a very, very difficult medium. If you want to push an idea across on Reddit, you've got to be very, very difficult. So I have not included it, even though it is a very popular social medium. Of course, WhatsApp. What's about WhatsApp? WhatsApp is something we can't live without today, right? Whether you put on your trousers in the morning or not, you will check your WhatsApp message. And you may check your WhatsApp messages forgetting that you don't have your trousers on. So WhatsApp is what all of us live on today. There is no way in our lives that we can be without WhatsApp. And for good reason, it's great, but it's primarily a messaging app. It's not social media for various reasons, because even though it has some advantages, the major advantage being that you can use it for small private groups. And as we already said, it has very high user engagement. No, you will not, an important message may be waiting for you from your boss, but you won't bother. But if something comes on WhatsApp, even if it says, hey, look out the window, there's something happening there, you'll immediately look. It's got urgency and immediacy that is extraordinary, that none of the other social media use. So for small groups, if you want to get messages across, like say you're working with a small group of women trying to make change on some habit, and you want to make sure they do certain things on time at certain times, for those kind of things, WhatsApp is extremely effective for advocacy. But by and large, it's not considered as an effective advocacy tool because its reach is very narrow. And content sharing on WhatsApp has now got serious limitations. You can't send it across in a viral fashion. What therefore emerges is that to be successful on social media today, you can't just use one. You've got to use probably a mix and match of a variety of tools depending on what you want to do. And the question arises, how do I manage all of this? And for that, there are tools today. There are what are called tools for managing multiple sites. Particularly a very popular one is something called Hootsuite, which allows you to monitor multiple social media sites in one single dashboard. You can get your Twitter, you can get your Facebook, you can get your LinkedIn, you can get sub-branches all on one single tool so that you're happening on across your social media and you can react between one and the other. You can schedule, you can post, you can look at data. Hootsuite is, again, for anybody who is serious about social media, as an advocacy tool, Hootsuite is a desktop manager, a dashboard that is useful and reasonably priced. It's not very expensive. What social media, however much you might try, the ultimate to put your post or your tweet or your Instagram into somebody's post depends. And this algorithm is controlled by the people who own the social media. And the people who own the social media are interested in only one thing. What's that? Making money. They're not interested in much else other than making money. And how do they make money? Advertising. How do you advertise? You have to send the message to the maximum number of people. And this whole strategy, which can be extremely complicated and extremely mathematical, is what determines where your social media post ends up. You're fighting the algorithm. And this algorithm is based on things like engagement, how recent, whether it's what's called clickbait, whether it is spam, whether it reflects bias that we talked about. So ultimately, your reach in social media boils down to the same thing again, the quality of your content. And the algorithm will favor you only if your content is high quality. You can do what's called gaming the system. You can try and see whether I can, tweak it so that to make it make my message more popular. Gaming the system can be done by tactics called keyword stuffing, where we said earlier on your hashtags are extremely important in terms of determining who gets to see it. You can use keyword stuffing, where you can put false keywords into your message. You can use what are called engagement pods. That is, a group of you, 8 or 10 of you get together and say, whatever you put up, I will like it. Whatever you put up, I will react to it. So that way you create your own engagement pods to improve the dissemination. You can write misleading headlines. You may be talking about something very boring, but your headline could say something extremely different, what's called clickbait, commonly referred to as clickbait. You can buy followers. There are people who will sell you followers, where you say, for every $100, I'll give you a list of 10,000 followers. All of these are, again, not recommended because ultimately the algorithm will catch you out. And once the algorithm catches you out and bans you, you can never use the social media again. So that it's not advocated. And again, a useful piece of advice here, given by the Nobel laureate Muhammad Yunus, who said it's only our arrogance that prompts us to find unnecessarily complicated answers to simple problems. So gaming the system on social media won't work. It'll ultimately, unless you're extremely clever, and if you're that clever, you won't need social media. You'll be making millions in other ways. Can you own your own platform? Now, here we said that Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, all of them control you. Can you own your own platform? Yes, you can. There are methods today, and in the era now where Twitter is, as you all know, is falling apart, this extraordinarily clever guy who is also extraordinary, what's the word for it, crazy, Elon Musk, bought the entire operation and is now taking it apart. It's like you buy a small child a very expensive toy, and instead of playing with the toy, he takes the wheel out, he takes the battery out, he takes the motor apart. That's what's happening to Twitter. It's coming apart. And there are other sources. The most important one that's emerging is a device called Mastodon, which is an open source social media that you can own and operate for yourself with the reach of, takes a lot more time, but it's an option. There are also other paid options like Ning and Social Engine, but to do this, you need large investments of time, money, and emotion. It's not something that you can casually, like your Instagram, whenever you see a nice picture, you can't send it across. You have to spend 14 hours, 12 hours, 14 hours a day promoting your social media. So owning your own platform is possible, but extremely, extremely difficult. So, lunchtime. Yeah, I mean it. I'm with my last slide. Why do we need advocacy? In this kind of age where it sometimes seems that it's almost impossible to make change because there's so much happening. At the coffee break time, Mahalakshmi pointed out to me something where she said, yes, it's difficult, but what if you had the capacity and you didn't use it? That is, in other words, you could change, but you gave up very early. That is a tragedy. If you had the capability and didn't use it, that's a tragedy. And that's the reason why we need advocacy, because as William Faulkner said, how many of you know who William Faulkner was? Mahalakshmi, don't put your hand up. Anybody has heard of William Faulkner? No. Okay, it doesn't matter. He was a writer from about almost 100 years ago. And he said that never be afraid to raise your voice for honesty, truth, and compassion against injustice and lying and greed. If people all over the world would do this, it would change the earth. And Faulkner didn't have social media. Faulkner didn't have Instagram, and Faulkner didn't have Facebook or Twitter. Faulkner only had a pen and paper to write with. But he had the courage to make the change. The same thing again, we didn't go much further than our own Mahatma Gandhi. What did he do? He had nothing. But he had the courage to stand up to the British and to carry the advocacy of get out of this country. So advocacy is important. And I think advocacy is particularly important in healthcare because it's not enough if you publish and you have a highly accepted academic publication unless you can take that message out across to the people to whom it matters. And to do that today, I think you're young people out here, you have these enormously powerful tools that just are mind-blowingly powerful. It's up to you to meet up the challenge, use them, and see how much more purpose you can add to your lives, right? Thank you very much for inviting me and for having the patience to listen to this presentation. Again, it's a very old guy talking about a very young technology to a group of even younger people. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. As you have given the message, we, the doctors who know science and do scientific work and research, we should start communicating. As sir told, almost everyone have Instagram, everyone are in every social media, and we should start talking. If we produce noise and raise the voice, it will help the public. That's what I felt at the end of the session. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for your time, giving us your time and explaining us a very important topic which we all of us should advocate in our advocacy. Now I'll invite Dr. V.N. Mahalakshmi, Dean Health Professions Education, AVMC, and Dean Interdisciplinary Studies, VMRF, to present the memento to our resource person. Yeah. Do you have any questions? Sir will be ready to. Yeah, yes, sir. We have Dr.
No doubt, this social media has got a lot of impact. But as scientists, sometimes people rush through the social media before even publishing the data in peer-reviewed journals. So what's your opinion on this?
Well, that's wrong. You're hitting on a very, very important aspect where the desire to be heard is greater than the desire to be validated. And I think that's what we've been talking about all day is validity of information. And this is a terrific menace. People and their desire to be heard take it across. And why did that happen? Because of the power of the tool. You never had this power more than 20 years ago. Unless your journal was accepted you, only then could you send it out. So this requires a lot of restraint, but unfortunately, it's up to the individual. Nobody can force you to do this. And in an era where change is happening so rapidly, your idea can get outdated within minutes. So there is this enormous, the combination of human desire with a technology that is extremely powerful, extraordinarily powerful. And that what you're pointing to is a very, very extremely valid concern. And that you're getting ideas, information out into the public domain before it is validated by peers. Requires a lot of effort.
When we talk about research outcomes, we keep talking only about publication, grant received, patent coming out of it, IPR copyrights and things like that. But we forget that this is also a most important research outcome. Whom it is intended for, does it really reach the public? Certain things are okay, like if we just do. But many times we find that they have done some study which says that cell phone radiation affects the growing embryo, something like that. So, but it doesn't reach across to the people because scientists sit in one silo or they sit in their own bubble, and they feel that there is no need to engage with the public because it is their job to produce papers, their jobs to get citations,
right,
rather than to translate the outcomes of research for public. Yeah. So how do we break this?
The word or two words for what you're describing is ivory towers. Academics living in ivory towers who say that my job is not dissemination of information, my job is establishing the truth. Today, I think you own a responsibility to people. I think it's not enough if you establish the truth. You do need to disseminate it. But again, it can be a conflict of temperaments. The people who do this kind of truth-seeking are very, very, let me say, whether they find media dissemination or any of these kind of what they call publicity very distasteful. It's very rare that you will find somebody who has a combination of both. Either guys are sitting in their ivory towers and refusing to come out, or there are complete blackguards who are taking absolutely nonsensical information and then selling it as the truth. Mahalakshmi is the challenge that these people have to meet. Again, keep saying this, my day is over. And not only is my day over, I had the extreme satisfaction of listening to you today and realizing that I had done a job well. No, it's your responsibility, guys. It's yours. This is you're sitting at a stage in history that is so dangerous. Climate change. I don't think we quite realize how much of a bomb that is waiting to go off. Climate change is going to affect each and every single aspect of human activity. And where it's going to have the maximum effect is health. Effect of climate change, you have to contend with that. Your generation will get it square in the face. You have to. So these are all not challenges that you can say, it's not my bother. You have to get involved. You have to commit. You have to change what you can. Acceptancy, complacency, and all that is fine. But it's not going to cut the ice. You have to. And that's the reason why I still enjoy interacting with young audiences, is the fact that I need to stimulate, I need to provoke, I need to put ideas in your head to carry forward. You're sitting on the brink of mankind's greatest problem ever. Historically, there has never been, and because it's not something that is happening right outside us, we keep thinking, I think there's too much talk about it. No, it's happening time and time and time again, every single way. All these weather changes that you're seeing, the catastrophes of an incredible magnitude. I'll give you a small example. Have you ever been to Ooty? I'm sure a lot of you have, right? There's a lovely place in Ooty called the Rose Garden. It is the most incredible collection of roses that you will find anywhere in the world. 25 to 27,000 varieties. Carefully labeled. Most of us don't even know it exists. It's such a beautiful, magnificent collection. You know what happened last summer? Because of climate change, we had unseasonable rain. And the entire collection wilted. It's gone. My wife and I went there to see, and in fact, we said it was like heartbreaking. It's gone. And that's just one small example of what climate change is going to do to you. It's the single most important problem that humanity is facing today. And you have to get involved. Every one of you has to get involved. You can't, it's a responsibility that you can't shy away from. And that's why you need advocacy. You have the tools for it. Even if it is not going to be millions and billions of people seeing you, you definitely have the wherewithal to bring in a small group of like-minded thinkers. You know, Margaret Mead said that. She said, never underestimate the power of a small group of people to make change. She said, in fact, it's the only group that has historically made change. It's a small group of committed individuals working with passion for advocacy, and that's the challenge of your generation. You have to live up to it. We created the problem for you, no question. My generation consumed, my generation blamed the panel, burnt the atmosphere. My generation created this whole consumption economy that we're also driven by, and left you the problem, but you have to meet that challenge. And that's the message I want to leave you across today. Advocacy is essential. Don't run away from it. No?
Thank you, sir. You have created a spark in all the younger generation. We doctors, we pledge that we'll do it. And as a honor, we'd like to give you a standing ovation, sir. All the audience, please. Thank you, sir. Now I would like to invite Dr. V. N. Mahalakshmi, madam, to give present the memento to the resource person, Dr. Arjun Rajagopalan, sir. I'd like to invite Madam Dr. Geeta Arjun also to share, to join us, please.